Peace and blessings to you. I've called this story the parable of the bad Samaritan. Once upon a time there was a bad Samaritan. He hated Jews, he hated Romans, he hated Greeks, he even hated most other Samaritans. He cruelly beat his donkey and was always asking for drinks on credit at the inn, but never settled his account. He liked taking the road from Jericho to Jerusalem, and once he had whipped and goaded his poor donkey there, he would try to sell the inferior olive oil from his olive trees and the diluted wine from his vines. With the money he would buy cheap and nasty baubles, bangles and beads. Then he would take the long road back, down and down through the dry valleys, trying hard not to notice any fellow travellers on the way, in case they asked him for money or for a ride on his donkey. He often went to the well where the Samaritan women used to go and draw water, and there he would sit and irritate the ladies with vulgar jokes and suggestive remarks. He never lifted a finger to help them with their heavy clay pots, and wasted their time and usually his breath trying to flog his Jerusalem trinkets at inflated prices. He wanted desperately to get married, but for many years his reputation prevented any Samaritan woman from coming near him, and he was far too bigoted to think of marrying someone else from another culture. And yet eventually a Samaritan woman with an equally bad reputation, and who, believe it or not, had been married 5 times before, took pity on him. She moved in with him, and they became the most despised couple in all of Samaria. It was bad enough that she had had so many husbands before, but now cohabiting with him made her the butt of insults and of total rejection, especially from the women who always used to draw water at the well together, either in the early morning or the early evening. To avoid them, she was thus obliged to go there in the middle of the day, in the heat and dust of the most unpleasant hour, with the sun beating down mercilessly overhead. The bad Samaritan would often have his lunch under his vine trellis and then take a long siesta while she went off to get the water. One boiling hot afternoon, she came back from the well in a state of great excitement and unwisely shook him awake. "Come and see a man who told me everything I ever did," she said. And when he slapped and cursed her, she went outside, and losing all her usual shyness, she said the same words to everyone she met in the street. He waited, gleefully expecting to hear her running back home with the usual signs and sounds of violence and aggression hurled towards her. But instead of which, there was an uncanny silence. He got up and went out. There was no one around at all. The town had emptied. But at the street corner he saw a crowd of the townsfolk hurrying with her towards the well. It seemed utter madness to him, but he followed. There, at the well, with the other Samaritans, he found a Jew. Water sparkled from the Jew's beard. Water sparkled from his head and hands. Water drops sparkled on his dusty feet. And then the Jew, looking at him with tired but welcoming eyes, lifted his wet hands, opened his mouth, and began to speak. Some months later, the bad Samaritan returned on the familiar road from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he saw a half-naked Jew lying there, robbed and wounded, his face, his tired eyes, his hands wet with blood, reminded him of the Jew at the well where his so-called wife had led him. And he remembered what that hot, tired, and thirsty Jew had said and taught. It seemed utter madness to him to think what he then thought. I didn't manage to sell all my wine and oil. He took the saddlebag from the donkey and removed 2 flasks. He knelt awkwardly in the hot dust, bending over a half-dead, bleeding Jew. And for the very first time in his life, a deep well of compassion, like living water, welled up within him.